Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, E-commerce Benchmarks and Trends, How Does Your Business Stack Up? I'm Heather, I'm a Senior Content Marketing Manager at ShipBo, and I'm so excited to show you all what we've been working on over here in partnership with the ShipBob team. But before we get going, first I would like to cover a few housekeeping items with everyone. We encourage you all to submit questions that come up during the presentation. You can just submit them right there in the question area in the console. We'll get to as many as we can during the Q&A portion at the end. We'll also be monitoring the chat, so please feel free to throw your questions and discussion points in there. We encourage everyone to participate and engage with us and each other in the chat, but we do ask that everyone please be considerate, friendly, and professional so that everyone can feel comfortable and welcome here. Let's see what's next. And lastly, of course, would love for you to join in on the conversation on social as well. Our amazing social team will be live tweeting throughout the whole webinar. So we encourage you all to engage with our content and to share your own. Just make sure you tag us so we can engage with your posts. You can see our handles right here on the slide. We're at GoShippo and at ShipBob. All right, and on to the next slide.
If you don't mind, I'll jump in real quick too, just so while you intro, people can get their fingers moving. So what we like to ask often is, where's everybody calling in from? So it's always cool to see where everybody's dialing in. I know we're all in different locations. So yeah, there we go. Missouri, and maybe Gabriel's in Hawaii. So toss it in there. I will as well. And sorry, Heather, we'll throw it back to you.
No worries. We've got people from all over the world, it looks like, which is super exciting. But yeah, so just to give a quick overview of our 2021 benchmarks report, which is what we're all here to discuss today. So our two teams, Shippo and ShipBob, co-published the report just a few weeks ago, published it as a resource to help merchants get an understanding of where the industry stands after going through all the substantial shifts that took place over the last year and a half, especially when it comes to shipping and fulfillment. The report showcases a wealth of data from both Shippo and ShipBob. We pulled it from across industries, from across business sizes, to get a look at the industry changes and the new norms, and then provide insights and recommendations based on that data that we're seeing. So I won't drag on too long about it. I'll let our host get into the details. But in case you do want to access the full report, I'll drop the link into the chat. And then if you stay throughout the entire presentation, we will automatically direct you right to the download page after closing things out as well. And now, without further ado, I will pass things along to our hosts. So over to you, Stephen and Casey.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I think we're going to have a great time here. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at ShipBo. And I'll be taking the lead first, but I do want to give Casey an opportunity to introduce himself. And by way of introduction for me, Casey and I actually worked together previously when we both worked at Big Commerce in Austin, Texas. I'm here in Austin and really enjoying working at ShipBo and seeing all the great things that our merchants are able to do with the shipping platform. Casey, I'll let you introduce yourself too.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. As always, great to see you again here. As Stephen mentioned, I'm the CMO over at ShipBob. So it's all things marketing, but also the partnership side of the business as well, which is why I get to work with awesome companies like ShipBo and Big Commerce and many others. And thanks everybody for throwing in where you're located. We've got people from all over, Dubai, England, Argentina, Canada, and then we have a lot of people from Milwaukee jumping in there as well. So I know it was a big win for you basketball fans out there last night. And then there we go, Joanna in Portugal, one of my favorite countries out there. So thanks everybody.
I'm personally more of a Milwaukee Admirals fan. I'm a hockey person. So if anybody out there is a Milwaukee Admirals fan, that is a very niche reference. And I'm jealous of everybody here who's saying that they're from somewhere but currently in Mexico or Hawaii. The travel bug is certainly itching me. So looking forward to getting that done soon. So let's jump in here. There's no surprise. The reason why I'm not personally in Mexico or Hawaii is the experience that we've all had over the last year and a half of the pandemic. And it's really shifted the way that everyone has shopped online. I don't need to tell anybody here that e-commerce has significantly changed over the last 16 months. And these are permanent trends. 29% of the US and 37% of people worldwide say that they are shopping for items more online than they did before the pandemic. And the interesting thing here is it's predicted that 1 in 3 of these purchases will stay online permanently and never go back to a brick and mortar type of purchase environment. I know for my personal experience buying things, I've discovered the ease of e-commerce for a lot of things that I previously would have just gone to the local store for. And I'm sure you all are seeing that both in terms of your experience as merchants, but also just as consumers. And we can see that this is happening all across the industry, all across the company or the country, with the NRF, National Retail Federation, saying that they expect the U.S. economy to grow 6.6% this year. And that's the highest that it's been since 1984. So this is sort of a once in a generation type of growth this year that we're experiencing, both as an entire economy and in e-commerce specifically. And let's dig into that in terms of e-commerce. So how are consumers spending their money online? And then as merchants, what is the shipping cost and how is that factoring into the overall revenue that you get at the end of the day, the profit that you may see from your business? Average order value is a pretty common metric that we use in the industry to talk about cart value. You can see here that we've broken down the average order value by the different verticals that you might experience. So apparel, electronics, sports and outdoors. Not a lot of surprises here in terms of the cart value. The electronics and sports and outdoors higher than things like apparel or health or wellness. What I really want to do is take a look at this slide and look at these numbers, and then let's take a look at what's going on in the next slide, which is where we're going to talk about the percentage and the amount that is spent in these different categories for shipping. As we look at the shipping spend, you can see that it's about $9.43 on average for shipping across all the different industries, and then we pulled out the same 6 industries. One of the things to consider here is, let's take a look at beauty and skincare, for example. Beauty and skincare on the last screen was $63 for the average order value, but you're spending about the same as apparel, health and wellness, or jewelry for your shipping spend. So that means your margin is going to be a lot lower. It's actually about 14% of your AOV is spent on shipping in beauty and skincare. But then if you look at something like electronics or sports and outdoors, it's a lot lower. It's a little bit higher margin on the shipping there. So this is something that you need to consider as you look at your entire profit and loss. Shipping can be a profit center. Shipping can be also a loss leader if you don't make the right choices in terms of setting up the proper service areas, considering some of the things that Casey will talk about zone delivery speed and the ways that you can get things out to your customers in an efficient way. It needs to be more than just an afterthought. I know for a lot of us as consumers, it's a thing that it's the last thing you think about. Oh, it'll be here in 2 days. You click the button. But for us as merchants on this side of things, we need to think about shipping as a key part of our costs that we're considering as we drive through. How exactly we're going to end up with being in the black at the end of the day. Again, something that we don't need to say out loud for it to be a surprise here. The e-commerce order growth that we saw, the value increased exponentially. And I'm an engineer by training, so I want to specifically hone in on that word, exponentially. Like a lot of times people use that word hyperbolically, but here we're actually talking about exponential growth. We're talking about doubling on top of doubling. Like that's what we're seeing here. And if you dig into the numbers more, you can see that the order value for e-commerce orders, comparing these different seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter, was growing at or above 100%. On average across all of these. I think we can all speak from personal experience that a lot of our personal spending shifted to online during this time, and I know that I did that, and you could see that it's borne out in the numbers as well. Another interesting piece of it is the average package deliveries year over year. This grew exponentially, maybe more than exponentially, if you will, 147%, 130%, spring over spring, summer over summer. It's really an interesting thing too when you compare it with the previous average order value items, that the number of packages delivered grew more than the average order value. So you think about maybe fewer items per order. Maybe people needed things in a more expeditious way. They needed things immediately that they would have maybe run to the grocery store to get. So lots of packages maybe with a lower order value overall. Some interesting things in conclusions that you can drive from this raw data. And speaking of raw data, one thing that I thought was really interesting was our data on returns. We all know that returns are just part of the deal in e-commerce. Not everything can be perfect every single time. And we know that in some industries, they're more common than others, right? Apparel, right? If the shirt doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and you have to return it. When I looked back at these exact same numbers in our benchmarks report from 2020, something really strange jumped out to me. And that's that these numbers were much higher. About 8% was the average return rate across all these different industries in the 2020 report. But in our 2021 report, you can see the average return rate dipped below 2%, which is incredible. But then I started thinking about it more. If more of our purchases are shifting to online, then you're buying more things that are sure things, right? I would usually go down to Target and buy diapers for my daughter. Now I buy them online because I can't go into the Target. Well, I'm not going to return the diapers. Well, certainly not going to return the diapers used. Not the sort of thing that you would want to return, and not the sort of thing where there's a high risk that it's not right. You know what size it is, and you know what works for your family, for you personally, for the house, whatever you might be getting. So I think a lot of these purchases shifted to being more sure shot type of purchases online that you might have just gone to the grocery store for, you might have gone to Target or Walmart or whatever your local store is to get. They shifted to online, and so the return rate lowered. We can see, though, that the general trends still followed. Apparel, for example, still the highest of this entire bunch because size and fit and color and all those things are very important, and you just don't know until you get it onto your body and you know, okay, this feels good in the shoulders, and oh, but no, the waist isn't right. I got to send it back. And one thing that we do recommend for our shippers at Shippo is that you include a return label in the box when you send out the package. They won't get charged for it until it's actually used when you're on the Shippo platform, but it means that the returns are much smoother for the end merchant, for the end consumer, and they will have a much better experience with returns. And somewhat paradoxically, they will actually be more likely to return with you, even if they didn't get the right product, but they had a smooth return experience. So that's something to consider as you go through the return process. Lastly, I want to talk about e-commerce shipped internationally. These are the rates that we saw of how many of these packages were heading out to international destinations on the Shippo platform across the same verticals that we just discussed. These are actually significantly down from last year. Every single one of these was above 50% compared to last year. And so it's an interesting comparison to see that some of them dipped, about half of them there dipped below the 50% mark, some significantly, beauty and skincare down 35%. And you have to wonder if there are any effects here from the pandemic, perhaps international connections and international trade slowing down, where maybe it was not possible or people didn't think they'd be able to get things out internationally. So that's an interesting piece. And then just to conclude there on the international, these are the most common destinations from the US. We obviously know Canada and Mexico are basically the US's top two trade partners. And then rounding out the five are some Commonwealth countries, UK and Australia, and then Germany, which is obviously a powerhouse of the EU in terms of consumer and manufacturing. So this is the international picture, but Casey actually has some of the domestic picture and looking at a state-by-state breakdown of how shipping happened inside the 50 states this past year.
Awesome, thanks, Stephen. And one of the, I guess, back-to-back slides that I thought were most interesting that you presented, Stephen, also were showing the average order value based off of different verticals, and then showing the shipping costs because the average order values were all over the place. Whereas the shipping costs were pretty constant. I think the lowest you had was around $8.50 and the highest was around $11, and which is not necessarily a huge difference. And so just something as a lot of brands think about product expansion or where they're going to run their next business is where is there the most margin, where are customers preconditioned to spend more. I know it's something that a lot of you guys think about. And then on returns as well, I see a lot of chatter around the return rate from a percentage basis. So anything that Stephen shares, anything that I share, that you guys are seeing different information. Again, we're looking at it across thousands and thousands of sellers and millions of items shipped every single month. So it's it's blended across a lot of different businesses, which also makes the data, I think, rather helpful. but it's always great to hear specific anecdotes from you all as well. And so here we are with oh, there we go. I can switch it. So the fulfillment trends across the US. So I'm going to talk about a lot of different data sets here. Something I like to geek out about. Hopefully I'm not boring you all with some of this, but what I would like is you to chime in as well in some of the trends that you're seeing, and why I think it's important to see where and how people are buying specifically across the US, which is where I'm sure a vast majority of your customers are based, is also how you think about how you split your inventory, and also where and how you focus your marketing and sales efforts. And so what's interesting with this slide that I wanted to call out is half of the orders that we saw in 2020 came only from 8 states. And that's not too surprising based off of population trends. But I was still surprised that it was only 8 states that covered 50% of those orders. And so you can see them in the bottom left: California, Texas, New York, Florida, Illinois, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Ohio. But again, that's a small amount. And I think we cover it later, but I want to say it's something like 21 states accounted for less than 10% of all orders in 2020 as well. Let's go to the next slide. Here we go. Per capita. So I found this rather interesting. And so this is where we looked at how many orders did people make based off of the population. And so you can see there some of the least active states, including Missouri and Arkansas. And then we also looked at the average order value times the orders, and then based off of the population, which is who is spending the least per state. And again, you'll see Missouri, Arkansas in there as well. Kentucky makes it into the mix. Then the biggest spenders by average order value. I think the surprises to me were Arkansas and North Dakota jumping in there, but that's also something I was thinking about, is when it's tougher to get things in person, and maybe when people are in more rural areas, people will buy more items online at one time. The lowest spenders, you can see those in the bottom with even actually New York and DC were in there, and New Jersey. Again, the most active buyers, you'll see Massachusetts, Oregon, a handful of other states, and then also 30% of all orders came from just California, Texas, and New York. And then here are a few more. I know we're going to send the slides out afterwards, but some of the items that I wanted to call out here that were pretty interesting to me is Massachusetts. The average consumer spends almost 12% more per order than the rest of the U.S. In Ohio, the average consumer places 50% fewer orders, which is a huge difference. And then Texas, because it's always fun to trigger people from Texas, the average consumer places 32% fewer orders. And so that's what I found pretty interesting, where Texas easily placed in the top 3, but when you look at it based off of the population, they actually don't buy online as much as a lot of the other states. So the transit times over the last year, I'd say one of the bright spots of the supply chain, and of course it's not perfect, but is just how the carriers have rebounded in 2021. And a big focus for us at ShipBob is partnering with a lot of the regional carriers as well. And part of that's due to our close relationship with Shippo as well, and how we've been able to jointly all partner with a lot of the regional carriers. But we look at the average transit time for the core 4. If you go to carriers.shipbob.com, I'll actually throw it in the chat. We update this every week. And so if you ever want to see what the performance is for the different core 4 carriers, so FedEx, USPS, UPS, and DHL, you can go to that anytime. But I always find it interesting to see how things are fluctuating up and down. Here's a screenshot of that with USPS. But a lot of the carriers are actually operating better than their pre-COVID levels. And so we have that trend line there if you guys want to check it out. Right now, only FedEx is operating below levels, and they pretty much have been since January of this year. UPS has been pretty consistent right around their pre-COVID trend line. They just jumped above above it last week, but it's, they've been pretty consistent. And I'd say that the theme across the board, if you look at all of them, except for FedEx, it's been pretty flat since January of this year. And so I think the consistency is good to see. The only one that's not flat is FedEx, but that's because we've been seeing improvements in their speed more or less week over week since towards the end of January. There was a huge blip for a lot of the carriers because seemed like half of the country froze, including Texas, which never happens, which impacted a lot of businesses. I know it impacted a lot of the manufacturing for businesses, especially in the plastics industry. But that was a wild time. I used to live in Austin, and so I was glad to not be there for that. But I'm sure Stephen has some wild stories from that. And then shipping trends. Stephen, is this us together, or you want me to keep going?
Why don't you keep running with it?
Awesome. So I don't have any of the quotes here, but from free shipping, both reducing cart abandonment, but also AOV, something that Stephen touched on a little bit and that I talk about quite a bit is viewing, better shipping and fulfillment options to your end consumers as a revenue driver versus a cost center. And so there's a customer of ours called I Love Plum who likes to talk about this quite a bit, where by offering 2-day shipping and being very blatant about the free 2-day shipping options, they actually saw an increase in their average order value by 97%. I would not use that as a baseline in your expectations because that is a massive fluctuation, but we often see brands in the 15 to 25% range in their increase in AOV because they're offering that fast and free shipping. And it's really easy for people like Stephen and myself to say, hey, just offer fast and free shipping. It's what people want. You have to analyze your business, understand your COGS, understand your customer acquisition costs, all of that. I completely understand that. But that's where that you can run different tests on where should those free shipping thresholds be. What is your average order value today? What are the most commonly purchased item or items? And then start testing different free shipping or free 2-day shipping thresholds based off of that to see if you can leverage that fast and affordable shipping to hit those, to increase your average order value. And real quick, I saw a question from Sean. Is this analysis ground only? Yes, Sean, it is ground only. Air, you can often get extremely reliable 1- and 2-day shipping. So I wanted to call that out. And then the last bullet is really fulfilling closer to your end consumer. And so I don't have the map in here, but the way that your rates are calculated are based off of primarily based off dimensional weight and then your shipping zones. And so of course, the closer you can be to the end consumer, the lower the costs and also the faster the speed. And so something that we do with pretty much all prospects before they jump over to ShipBob is what we call a time in transit analysis. And so we'll look at your last 1 to 6 months of order volume and where people are purchasing from and give you a recommendation on where and how you should split. It's up to you, the merchant or the seller, to figure out where and how you want to split your inventory. But this way, at least from a data perspective, you can see what is the best way for you to split based off of both time and cost. Because then you have to make the decision for your business of, is it worth splitting the inventory or not? Which I touched on here, so we can skip that slide. And here are the maps. And so here you can see, this is an example. We work with so many sellers that are based in Southern California. So LA, San Diego, Orange County, Ventura County, and they'll often ship themselves for a long time. But as you can see, you're in zone 5, even in parts of Colorado and New Mexico, and you're in zones 5 and 6 for all of Texas, which is a top 3 state. And then, in New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, of course, that's zone 8, shipping across the country. That's going to get extremely expensive and be very slow. Whereas if you look at, in this example, with just splitting across 3 fulfillment centers, so Southern California, Texas, and the Northeast, you pretty much only in the southernmost part of Florida and the northernmost part of North Dakota and Minnesota, where a lot of people don't live anyways, the highest zone you're going to see here is a zone 5. So again, when you're trying to figure out leverage opportunities with your business and how to put more money in your pocket, is thinking through splitting the inventory. Because not only does that save you costs, but it can save you a lot of time and provide a much better customer experience. And that can also open up opportunities for that free shipping or 2-day shipping or free 2-day shipping, depending on the economics of your business. This is a graphic here we talk through with a lot of prospective merchants, because they don't often see it presented in this way, just in the true impact from a zones perspective. Again, where it's pretty much zone 5 is going to be your max. And again, this is only 3. If you split it up to 5, you can pretty much have everything in zone 4 or zone 3 and below. And then here's the shipping speeds by zone. This is with zones 1 through 8. And if we zoom in more, this is zones 1 to 5. But as you can see here, it's pretty consistent, just where you can really start carving off, let's say 0.2 to 0.5 days for every single zone where you're seeing these improvements. Stephen, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, Casey. I think it's interesting. We don't often think as consumers about where things come from. Ultimately, the fulfillment center, we know so-and-so company is headquartered here, but somehow it gets to you so fast. The fulfillment center strategy is really a way to get yourself out of those kind of dead zones, if you will, and not be able to deliver even better shipping across the country. And I think that starts kind of speaking to these slides as we start to wrap up, is the fact that these logistics do matter, and you need to be on top of shipping, because it is, as Casey mentioned, something that you can improve through changing up fulfillment centers, considering the services, the carriers that you cover, and bringing more automation to it is something that makes the process more efficient and ultimately drives customer satisfaction. We all know, as both consumers and as merchants, that getting things faster is just a way to drive higher satisfaction. And especially in the world that we're living in now, where 2-day shipping has become much of an expectation across a lot of areas, thanks to Amazon driving that expectation. We as independent merchants need to continue to deliver on that expectation as much as we can by using the tools that we have in our tool bag to make that happen. So really, we presented a ton of data here today, and Casey mentioned that it is data across millions and millions of transactions and orders and thousands of merchants, which is why it may vary from your individual experience that you're having as one person, one company out there running shipping for your e-commerce business. So really, you need to dive into that next level. Do whatever you can to get the data that is behind your shipping, whether that's working with your provider like Shippo or ShipBob to better understand what's happening in your shipping flow, analyzing your own orders through your e-commerce platform. Really, what you need to do, you can't wing it, is part of the problem here, because shipping is a numbers game at the end of the day, with dollars and cents and delivery times ultimately driving customer satisfaction and their ability to come back to your business and buy again. So you have to make sure that that data is available, it's cleanly readable, and ultimately drives insights for your business overall.
I'll jump in there as well, Stephen.
Yeah.
That's just where I know a lot of sellers are hesitant to hand off their fulfillment. It's their baby. It's not just a pure digital product. It's something that they can actually hold. You're probably storing it in your spare bedroom, in your living room, in your garage, maybe in your office that serves as a warehouse. But with the right solutions, you can have so much more visibility into your business. How long does it take to pick and pack and ship an order? What are the costs across the different carriers? What does it cost me to ship to certain states? what is the average order value and the impact, from a margin perspective? Where are my inventory levels so that I can order replenishment well in advance, especially with some of the higher in the supply chain issues that we're seeing across the world. What would the cost and time savings be by just clicking a button on and off of splitting the inventory across different states? So again, this is where I think getting analytical in advance before choosing the fulfillment solution that you're going to choose, whether you do it yourself or you outsource it, and then just making sure that you're in the position to very quickly be able to see the opportunities of splitting inventory. Because I talk to customers all the time. They're like, I really need to save costs, but they're shipping from one location. And so again, it's just where are there the biggest areas of opportunity that also don't take time from you, because your time is your most valuable resource, and you need to treat that accordingly.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's somewhat counterintuitive. You're adding more, but actually getting a lower cost or a lower delivery time or something like that. Going from 1 to 3 fulfillment centers may sound like it's more expensive, but ultimately it drives higher revenue for you, which is an interesting, better way to think about it. And Casey, you mentioned heading in here, these challenges and the ability and the fact that you need to be flexible and agile. Who knew going into 2020 that these were the challenges that we were going to face, right? We had port delays. You had container ships just sitting out in harbors and bays waiting to come into ports like Los Angeles and up in Seattle because of the number of things coming over. We had scarcity of raw materials because we couldn't get things manufactured. I mean, anybody tried to buy a car recently? My goodness, right? Or tried to sell your used car? It is an incredible time right now to be in that market. Shifts in product demand as well. I mean, who knew that we'd all have runs on toilet paper and those things? I was driving through the neighborhood the other day and I saw that somebody had actually toilet papered someone's house the other day. And I thought, okay, that's a sign that everything's returned to normal. If you're willing to toilet paper someone's house, then I guess we don't have a TP shortage, unless it's the world's biggest flex to show how much TP you have. That's certainly.
My neighbor got toilet papered also. It definitely put us
okay, so it's back now. Good. Well, we can all feel better about that. And then just factory and warehouse closures due to COVID, due to all the changes that those had. Carrier operations being stretched thin due to the amount of e-commerce. And then I don't think we can get out of 2020, 2021 land without talking about the Ever Given and the Suez Canal debacle, right? I mean, the most bizarre thing to happen, but it just shows you how tightly wound the entire logistics and shipping industry is worldwide, that one small thing like that could set off a cascade of effects that ultimately get us, to, the pasta that I ordered from a podcast that I listened to isn't going to arrive for another 12 weeks because a ship got stuck in the Suez Canal. It's an interconnected world that we live in, for sure. And then closing out here, just talking about some of the common mistakes that befall us all in this industry and how we can avoid them. Simple things like understanding our inventory flow, what comes in, what goes out, and making sure that we're not sitting on too much inventory. Casey, you want to talk a little bit about the fulfillment center piece of this and diversifying both that and your manufacturing locations?
Sure, and I'll jump back a slide real quick. I mean, you mentioned the port delays. I live about 40 miles south of the Long Beach and LA ports. This is where I grew up, and I, of course, wasn't looking for these, but in my entire life living here, I've never seen container ships on the ocean, and that's where I'd spend every minute that I could. For the past 6 months, there's container ships just covered in the ocean. It looks like a freeway pileup out there at times. It's starting to get a little bit more uncongested, but it blows my mind. I've never seen these before. The first time I saw it, it was a little bit after Christmas, and my son asked me if there were warships in the ocean because there were so many of them. So anyways, it's just hopefully things are getting a little bit better, or hopefully they're heading back, to Asia and like the boats and container situations clearing up a little bit. According to Freightos, we're still in a dire situation for a while. But anyways, it's been pretty mind-blowing, and I'm sure a lot of you are facing this here as well. Then yes, here. So the additional fulfillment centers, again, it's so easy for me just to say, well, split your inventory. But you need to look at, the just levels of complexity with splitting and managing inventory across one location if you're not using it like a single provider and the data that they're giving you. But again, that's just something you should definitely look at. And then I'd say siloing the e-commerce tech stack. So again, is making sure that you're working with solutions that are deeply integrated with your core technology, maybe not all of your technology, but at least your core technology. So you're looking at the same data across different platforms. I know from talking to a lot of people on the marketing side, they'll be looking at Facebook, they'll be looking at Google Shopping ads, they'll be looking at Google Analytics, they'll be looking at their Shopify or BigCommerce or WooCommerce data, and none of it matches. And so making sure that the solutions you're using are talking to each other, because nothing is more painful than having all these disparate data sets and then you're just having to smash it all together in Excel and nothing matches. And so, how can you leverage these solutions so you're able to make smart decisions for your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most frustrating things as a business owner is to not have matching data sources, and you just really need to have all those harmonized so you can make the best decisions. I mean, how do you know if you're winning or losing if you don't even know the score ultimately? And then the last thing I want to call out here on this slide, I know I mentioned it already, but it's worth another call out of just considering returns to be a normal part of the business. It's going to happen, and you have to have a strategy for it that ensures that your customers will come back. They feel that they are taken care of in that process. Make it as easy as possible for them. It's crazy, but I had a return the other day that I needed to do, and it took me a while to do it because I had to print a label. I don't own a printer. My printer, it isn't working right now, and so I had to wait until I could get access to a printer. If that person had shipped me a label in the box instead, I would have just taped it back up, put the label on the box, and taken it to the store. So there's all sorts of things that can be hiccups in the process, and so if you make it as easy as possible for folks to return, if there's a problem, somewhat counterintuitively, it makes them more likely to come back to you. So it's definitely an interesting thing to consider as you move forward in providing that return strategy. So finally, we're going to wrap up and just say in summary, I think looking at all of this data that we have here, it's pretty clear to say that e-commerce is moving up and to the right in a huge way in pretty much every regard. We are all riding this rocket ship, both here at Shippo and ShipBob, but also all of you are merchants, and we think that shipping is a key part of our e-commerce success. I know you guys all agree since you're here, preaching to the converted already. But I think that this is something that speaks to the need to pay attention to your data, make sure that you're analyzing and gathering those insights, and considering that shipping is a way that you can drive customer satisfaction and customer retention by having a good strategy around it and not making an afterthought. And I know that we have quite a few questions that have come in. Casey and I are gonna take those now. I believe Heather's gonna jump back in and be our moderator, pitching those back to us. So I'll send it back to Heather.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. That was super informative and awesome. I'm going to go ahead and shrink this slide deck so we can have more of our talking heads here showing. All right. Yeah, we got a good list of questions. Thanks, guys. I think probably a lot of this we've already, semi-covered, but I'll go through the list anyway. A lot of things I think for us to think about in our report next year, looking through, expanding our industry list to food, auto parts, etc. Looking at different kinds of metrics. So thank you, everyone, for your input in the chat. I'll just go ahead and start from the bottom of the list here. From Katie, asked, we're a water science company that has a water test kit for PFAS. We pay for both outgoing and return shipping. Do other industries offer return shipping?
I'd certainly love to see what people have to say in the chat on this question. Do you offer return shipping? Do you pay the cost? In what industry are you in, for what it's worth? I think we've seen that is a best practice in a lot of industries to pay for that return shipping because, again, as I mentioned, it gives you that customer satisfaction and is one less thing for them to worry about, makes it a little bit more frictionless. But I'd love to see what folks have to say in the chat about whether or not they provide shipping. Casey, do you have any thoughts on that?
My lazy-ish answer is it depends. I don't know the economics of their business. it's returns is tough, and so I'll take the fifth. I'll plead the fifth.
Fair enough.
Usually I have an opinion, but this one, we'll see.
Fair enough. And just a reminder to everyone in the chat, I see more questions coming through in the chat, but if you can drop those in the question section, that would be great. And we'll get to as many as we can today. Otherwise, we can respond to people individually afterwards. I know Stephen kind of touched on this one when the question was originally asked, but curious for Casey as he was presenting, any causation and or correlation observation within the US shipping data as it relates to the stay-at-home orders by state?
Good question. So I won't open up the causation correlation argument that I know triggers a lot of people, but we definitely saw that, especially with just the differences in I don't know about on the shipping time, but on spend we saw based off of when lockdowns came in certain states, and then also just the varying changes in unemployment and when stipends hit and everything. From the shipping speed, I'd say that was pretty universal across the board. And then from there, when we dove in a little bit deeper, it was more based off of like the weather issues across different states. And so I wouldn't say it was when the work from home orders came in. And then moving forward, again, things are looking pretty good right now. I know certain carriers are ebbing and flowing in different regions. Somebody called out FedEx and down in California. But we've seen things pretty constant across the board. But this is where we do see pretty wild fluctuations heading into the winter months, especially in like the Northeast.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I think we've probably got time for just a couple more questions. I'm trying to run through this list and see which ones we can get through. I think this is another one for Casey. Can you share some insight on fulfillment types, FBA, third-party, FBM? Sometimes it's easier to start selling with the FBA and use third-party fulfillment, but as sales grow, so does the fee and cost. How to know it's a good time to shift to build self-fulfillment?
I'm not advocating self-fulfillment. I don't think you're going to find cost savings there if you're shipping from one location, and you definitely won't be getting Amazon's 2-day speeds unless you're shipping it via air, and that's going to get real pricey real fast. I'd say it depends on what you're trying to achieve with your business. And so FBA is a great option, especially if you're only selling on Amazon. But it depends on what you want as a business. And so if you're selling across multiple platforms or multiple channels, let's say your own website and Amazon and Walmart, Facebook shop, that's where I think it really, really helps to find an alternate solution. And if you're only selling through your own website, FBA is not an option. And then from there, it depends on what you want from the business. And so with FBA, you're going to get, again, they provide world-class fulfillment across Amazon.com. But if you want to own that data and know who your customers are and being able to market and sell to them after the fact, both from a data perspective and a customization perspective, like that's not going to happen with Amazon. I know Amazon, because of some of the COVID stuff, they started limiting what you could sell, and they also started limiting what you could ship into them to even be fulfilled. And there's been rumblings of that persisting in 2021 and maybe rolling out heading into the peak months where everybody's trying to get their inventory in. So again, it depends on what you're trying to achieve as a business.
Awesome, thank you. Can either ShipBob or Shippo speak to an onboarding structure for new partner carriers to hop on your platforms that would integrate APIs and processes?
Provide very reliable, fast, and affordable shipping, and then integrate with Shippo so that we only have to click one button. That's my smart-ass answer. Steven, you want to jump in?
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that we pride ourselves on is onboarding, as far as getting you into the platform. And I think that one of the nice things, what we really want to be here at Shippo is the platform for e-commerce shipping. We want to provide connections into everything, into ShipBob, into your e-commerce platform, whether that's our alma mater, BigCommerce, or others, so that you just kind of have that one place to deal with your shipping. and that one button to click. And we really do pride ourselves on our onboarding support and the fact that we are able to get you started and implemented, whether you're a web app customer and you're just using it in your browser, or you're integrating it directly into your business through an API. So yeah, call us up, talk to us.
And on that note, I'm going to ask Vanessa's question. I think that this is probably all the time we've got for questions, and then we can answer everyone else offline. But are there any recommendations on good cartonization tools that can help us figure out what boxes are best based on items in the order so that shipping can be calculated properly? All our items use dimensional weight, and it has been a huge challenge to calculate shipping automatically.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, where is that one? Because there was a lot in that question, so I wanted to make sure that I got all of that.
It's in the question section.
The third question down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. So, well, I'll speak of something that we do at ShipBob. And so every single unique item that comes in, it actually goes through this Cubiscan process. And so that looks at the weight, but also does like a 360 scan of the product. That way we know it's basically a box like packaging optimizer tool. And that way, no matter where you're shipping with us, whether it's in our SoCal facility or over in Australia, it's always using the same box and same packaging. And so not everybody can afford necessarily a Cubiscan machine, but that's what we use, so that way we know how to mix and match every single variety of different orders or items that are in a single package. So again, that's what we utilize.
There's some folks at Shippo who I don't think would let me get out of this webinar with that question without mentioning cubic shipping. Just generally, just something to know about. Cubic shipping is just a different way of calculating the shipping rate. Shippo does offer it, and it's something that you should check out if you hadn't heard about it. It may be a cheaper way to ship packages, just based on the size and the cubic dimensions of the package. So go check it out. You can just do a search for Shippo cubic shipping. And I think that's something that can provide a better rates for you, but not a lot of people know about. So you mentioned cubic, so I had to mention cubic pricing.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Well, I think we're probably going to go ahead and wrap up. There are a lot of questions on here. We can answer a lot of those offline and get in touch with everyone offline. But thank you all for joining. It was great to have Stephen and Casey here presenting with us. And we hope to see you all next time. So keep in touch. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
everyone. Bye, y'all.